In Chinese mythology, the goddess Nuwa didn't just create humans from clay. She refined the cosmic pearl itself, chiseling and carving raw truth into a form mortals could grasp without being destroyed. Where Winds Meet asks you to do the same thing, except instead of carving stone, you're carving a digital life. The Harmonious Core sits at the center of everything in this game. Currency, enhancement, but look deeper and you'll find what it represents. A luminous sphere you polish through investment, refined through dedication. Every reforge, every transaction asks the same question Nuwa faced. What are you willing to carve away from yourself to create something new? Because that's what's actually happening here. These games, Where Winds Meet, Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, Infinity Nikki, the list goes on. They're not just entertainment. They're asking whether we're ready to carve out new forms of existence. Digital avatars that carry weight. Entire worlds where your choices, your relationships, your achievements matter as much as anything in the physical world, right? Let's dig deeper. Look at the patterns emerging across these games. Li Zhenjin in Where Winds Meet, the Lunar Goddess who was blind, manipulated for political balance, surrounded by flowers marking her grave. Columbina's statue in Genshin, blind and used as a political pawn. The same archetypal figure appears again and again, the seer who cannot see, sacrificed by those who refuse to look. These developers are speaking to each other through symbolism. They're building a shared language, and the question underneath that language is urgent. Are we carving out a new way of being human? Or are we just polishing the tools that will hollow us out? Let's start with the very first moment that made me feel like this game is gonna be different. I haven't played a game before that uses AI in real conversations with your NPCs, so this was a bit of a breakthrough for me, but it also made me feel conflicted. These AI chatbots get pretty repetitive once you're playing the game for a while, reducing your incentive and willingness to interact with them, but for that first impression, it was a groundbreaking moment. It's easy to get immersed in because your responses aren't presets. You're not just selecting an option, you're actually typing out what you're thinking. It provides a very different kind of conversation than the real players.
You're gonna go poop? No, please, come on, wait, no, not the deck, come on.
It gives us something increasingly rare. Complete control. That's when it hit me. Control is what we've always wanted. Control over appearance, longevity, legacy, meaning. We create the tools to achieve it, then blame those tools for controlling. Where Winds Meet might just be one of those tools. Beautifully crafted, philosophically rich, and economically aggressive. It offers you a chisel and asks, what will you carve? Who will you become? This video is about what happens when you pick it up. Before we dive into the story, we need the mythological foundation. In ancient Chinese creation myths, Pangu cracked open the cosmic egg, separating heaven from earth. His body became the world, eyes into sun and moon, blood into rivers, bones into mountains. Nuwa later shaped humans from yellow earth, dragging a cord through mud when her hands tired. But humanity needed more than bodies. They needed direction. So Nuwa carved the pearl, refining raw cosmic truth into something mortals could touch. Not the full truth, a version that wouldn't destroy them.
What they sought, they couldn't have. What they didn't want came all the faster.
The Harmonious Core in Where Winds Meet mirrors this exactly. It's premium currency, enhancement fuel, the thing you chase constantly. But it's also a confined truth, gamified, monetized, perfected for consumption. You're not just buying power, you're buying a carved down version of what the game could be if you had infinite time and resources. Other games from the East use the same language. In Genshin Impact's Genesis Pearl theory, pulled from Gnostic texts, a crowned heir descends to retrieve a pearl of ultimate truth from the kingdom of darkness. A black serpent with red and purple eyes corrupts it. The heir forgets their noble origin, believing they rule the darkness now. The pearl represents hidden knowledge, the origin of everything. The serpent isn't evil. It's a teacher offering forbidden wisdom. The corruption comes from mistaking partial truth for complete truth. Same pattern, different layers of reality, different games. But always the same question underneath. Will you remember why you started this journey once you have what you came for? Beyond the mythology, we also have to understand the historical context. The game takes place in 10th century China during the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, the chaotic collapse between the Tang Dynasty's fall and the Song Dynasty's rise. The Khitans invaded from the north, seizing the 16 prefectures of Yunyun, stripping China of its natural mountain defenses. Warlords carved up the south, while refugees flooded central plains. Emperor Zhao Kuangyin would eventually unify the land through conquest, but during the game's timeline, everything hung in balance. This was a time of blood and flowers, brutal warfare coexisting with flourishing art and poetry. Your protagonist enters this world as a blade without a master, forced to choose alignment in a conflict where both sides claim righteousness. They reference and tell the story non-linearly across the open world, through hidden quests, NPC conversations, and environmental clues scattered throughout regions. It's meant to emulate real life more than simple fetch quests. The narrative you experience is the culmination of events that began 16 years before you arrived. Critical turning points happened 3 years ago: an assassination, a failed northern expedition, and a disbanded resistance, all while you were too young to witness them. The game trusts you to piece together these timelines yourself, discovering how a blind swordsman, a fake monk, and a face-changing spy all converged on that fateful moment you returned home to find your village burning. This isn't a linear story you follow, it's a web of tragedies to untangle. And admittedly, that did put some players off. I find this one of the most immersive bits. But let's go back to the prologue. Where Winds Meet opens with a battlefield, flames, screams, a warrior clutching an infant to his chest, fighting through smoke and corpses. This is Jiang Yan, fleeing the Battle of Zhongdu Bridge, where his adopted father, General Wang Qing, opened a cursed box containing puppet poison that transformed him into a monster to save his men. If you're playing Wuthering Waves, these stories might sound similar to Geshu Lin and Chu Yuan. If you play Tara Fantasy with Nanyan, Jiang Yan had to kill his own father, a mercy, but history only saw murder. He became a traitor, a coward. It was a patricide, and he carried that dishonor for 16 years to protect one thing: you, the baby, the protagonist. Fast forward past the character creation, which I swear always takes me an hour. You return to Heaven's Pier, a peaceful countryside village where Aunt Han runs an inn and Uncle Jiang teaches martial arts. It's idyllic, safe, a refuge from chaos consuming 10th century China as the Tang Dynasty collapses and warlords carve up the land. But that safety is a lie. Heaven's Pier isn't a village, it's a front. Beneath the rice paddies and wine shops lies Still Shore, a massive underground spy network. Aunt Han is the Water Lady, legendary master of face-changing disguise. The villagers are disfigured patriots who volunteered for dangerous surgery to infiltrate the enemy armies. When the procedures failed, leaving them faceless and broken, Aunt Han hid them here, gave them purpose, made them ghosts. This is where Buddhism and Taoism intersect with animism and shamanism. In ancient Chinese thought, spirits inhabited everything: rocks, trees, rivers, ancestors. The world was alive with forces you couldn't see but could feel pressing against you. Heaven's Pier internalizes this. The village itself is haunted, not by supernatural entities but by living specters, people erased by necessity, existing between worlds. The Arya Pavilion attacks during a village banquet. Their leader, the witch, Chenya, burns down their village with fire arrows, specifically targeting the protagonist's loved ones. Ruby, the young girl who, not gonna lie, was a little bit annoying in the prologue, but you kinda grow to like her. When she tries to signal for help, arrows cut her down. Killer Blade, a wandering swordsman and anti-hero you befriended, makes a suicidal charge to buy you time. The village burns, and you escape alone. This is the game's thesis. There is no Pier. Heaven was never gonna hold. Let's talk about that archetype of spiritual corruption and energy flow. In Buddhism, Mara is the force of temptation and delusion that tried stopping Buddha from enlightenment. He doesn't destroy through violence, he corrupts perception, making false seem true. The puppet poison does this literally, stripping individual will, turning humans into extensions of someone else's design. Taoism has its own views on this, where Buddhism sees life as inherent suffering, requiring transcendence. Taoism sees life as joyful when aligned with natural flow. Suffering comes from the resistance to change. The puppets are ultimate resistance, bodies moving without flow, spirits locked in decay. They're frozen yin without any yang, death that cannot transform, the snake that cannot shed. Chinese animism believed negative energy accumulates when natural cycles break. Ghosts linger after unjust deaths. Villages curse when blood soaks earth. The Mistvale forest, poisonous fog, echoing whispers, manifests as spiritual pollution physically, unresolved pain. Li Zhenzhen, the Lunar Goddess, mummified in her underwater temple, wasn't divine. She was blind, manipulated into slaughtering her own people for political balance. Her lover asked her to preserve stability. She obeyed. The people hated her. She died heartbroken, poisoning the lake with grief. You don't fight her corpse. You fight the memory. You offer her what you think she wants, a moonlit flower to reunite her with the spirit of her lover, then find that all she wants is to reclaim her own story to let her energy flow again. And it does. Greek philosophy built reality on fixed essences. Ousia, the unchanging substance defining something's nature. Humans are rational animals, stone are inert matter, and gods are perfect beings. Chinese philosophy rejects this. Instead, reality is relational and dynamic. You're not a fixed essence, you're a nexus of relationships, a pattern of chi flow, a moment in an eternal cycle. The Greek boundary between human and barbarian was biological. The Chinese concept of ousia was cultural. You became civilized through practice. Where Winds Meet operates entirely on this framework. The class system, warrior, doctor, merchant, architect, it's about how you exist in the world. Your profession reshapes your story, relationships, access to truth. You don't have a fixed essence, you have a practice. The meridian system drives this home. Where Winds Meet treats HP as life force, chi, flowing through channels. When you're hit, when you fall, when you drink, when you're afflicted socially, your meridians might block. Healing is potions, acupressure, meditation, tai chi. You restore that flow, and often with the help of other players that are online. We see similar systems with combat, disrupting balance rather than depleting bars. Your mystic arts redirect hostile chi, parrying channels and coming force back to its source. You can't min-max meridians like DPS builds, though your stats and numbers are still a huge part of it to scratch the itch. At its core, you have to be good at the gameplay. If not, you'll struggle. You might yell at the TV, you might want to give up and quit, but those aren't bugs. It's the point. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the economy of these games. Where Winds Meet sells a boat for $40,000 to $50,000 worth of premium currency. Not a cosmetic skin, an actual gameplay vehicle requiring astronomical amounts of Harmonious Core to unlock and enhance. But people are buying it. Chances are, for a player to get it right away, they spent around 40 to 50k. I fully enhanced one weapon to maximum reforge levels, and then they got me with the new skin. And then once you get the new skin, you realize you have to spend to dye the hair if you want to change the color. So it's confusing, it's predatory, it sends you in loops, and I think the items in the shop are great because you know what you're getting for that flat price. So I definitely recommend going that route if you want to spend anything in the game. If you've been playing games for a while, then you've noticed that this is copying quite a few games from the past. From Assassin's Creed, we have historical settings rich with collectibles, viewpoints that reveal the map, quirky activities, parkour traversal that turns architecture into playgrounds, and quite a bit more. From Ghost of Tsushima, fluid sword combat, environmental storytelling, sound design, aesthetic-driven photography modes, duels that feel like cinema. From Elden Ring, boss encounters that reward pattern recognition, opaque lore requiring community collaboration to decode, and willingness to let players fail spectacularly. While from the live service games like Wuthering Waves, Tower of Fantasy, and upcoming games like Neverness to Everness, Ananta, we get flashy combat and animations, smart stamina systems encouraging constant movement and exploration, gacha mechanics funding ongoing development, elemental interactions, daily activities creating habitual engagement, character-driven storytelling that turns players into fans of digital people, fashion as core gameplay, social features rewarding self-expression, photography as content creation, mounts and vehicle systems, multiplayer raids, weapon gachas instead of character gachas. I mean, the list goes on. And listen, this game is of course riddled with glitches and bugs and flaws. But to have a little bit of fun, do you really need perfection? Some might call it imitation. I'm calling it appreciation on this one. An open world MMO that feels like it was designed by people who actually played and understood what made each of those games work. Complete control over a beautifully simulated world, and status for parasocial behaviors is increasingly more appealing than reality. Chapter 2 takes us to Kaifeng, where our trust collapses. You arrive alone, traumatized, searching for Uncle Jiang. The capital is chaos. The Northern Song dynasty is banning iron coins in favor of copper coins, destabilizing the economy overnight. Poor citizens can't afford bread. Underground gangs exploit the crisis. The Aria Pavilion, the same faction that burned Heaven's Pier, is manipulating currency flows to collapse the government from within. You meet Wucha, a mysterious figure navigating the city's underworld, but trust is a luxury you can't afford anymore. Everyone has a hidden agenda. Every ally could be an enemy in disguise. This is where the game's political philosophy crystallizes. Li Yu, the poet emperor ruling the southern Tang, is brilliant but weak. A man who writes exquisite verses about loss while losing his own kingdom. Zhao Kuangyin, the Northern Song's military genius, is destined to unify China through conquest. But both sides claim they're fighting for the people, for stability, for civilization. Both are drowning villages in blood to do it. The game forces you to choose sides, or reject both. When the winds of history are blowing, when change is inevitable and violence is the medium, do you align with power, resist it, or find your own path through the chaos? But you can't pretend the system doesn't exist. The game is honest about this and other moral dilemmas most free-to-play titles aren't. It says, this is the world, these are the rules, navigate accordingly. Here's where we return to the question from the opening. Are you willing to lose control of your real life to live in a perfectly simulated virtual one? The instinctive answer is no, that's dystopian. But let's be honest about what control actually means. We call it addiction, escapism, dystopia. We shame people for preferring the simulation. But at some point, in your own time, you step back and you look at the full picture. And you ask yourself, what are we escaping from? Let's take a look at the two sides of the coin. First, we got the case for shame. We're losing something essential. Human connection, messy, unpredictable, dangerous, has been the foundation of meaning for millennia. Literally millennia. Sitting across from someone, reading their body language, feeling their presence, risking vulnerability, that's irreplaceable because it's encoded in every fiber of our being. Virtual worlds offer connection without risk. AI offers conversation without challenge. Gacha games offer progression without genuine achievement. We're training ourselves to accept shallow substitutes for deep experiences. If we flee into simulations, we abandon the real work, fixing broken systems, building genuine communities, confronting mortality, accepting limitations. We become children hiding from storms in cardboard castles. The boat cost $50,000 because it's not a boat. It's a symbol of what we've given up. The money could fund education, healthcare, art, infrastructure. Instead, it purchases pixels, arranged to look like wood and sail. Pixels that glitch. Shame has a function. It signals when we violated our values. If spending thousands on games while ignoring real-world suffering feels shameful, that's conscience working. But life's not that simple, because there's also the case for potential. What if the simulation isn't a retreat? What if it's rehearsal? Virtual worlds let us test identities without permanent consequences. MMOs teach collaboration, resource management, strategic thinking. Gacha games train impulse control and long-term planning, or punish the lack thereof. Wuxia fantasies preserve cultural knowledge that might otherwise be lost. AI companions can help people with social anxiety practice conversation before facing real humans. Digital art preserves beauty in forms that museums never could. And sometimes, the virtual experience genuinely is better. A curious person like you and me gets to step back into the past. A lonely person can find community when geography or circumstance makes real-world connection hard. The boat costs $50,000 because it represents freedom some players will never have elsewhere. That's not objectively good or bad. It's human. We've always used tools to extend our capabilities. Telescopes let us see further. Books let us think deeper. Games let us be more. The question isn't whether you should use these tools, it's whether you're using them wisely. The game's title is a koan. If you don't know, it's used in Zen Buddhism to challenge logic and trigger sudden epiphanies, sudden gnosis. It aims to push your mind beyond reason, to fully feel present in reality. Consider where winds meet. The meeting point between opposing forces determines whether they create a storm or a gentle breeze. In Taoist thought, this is Wu Wei, effortless action through perfect alignment with natural flow. When the winds of change meet the mountains of tradition, resistance creates destruction. Flexibility creates survival. Where winds meet asks you to find that point. Not to resist history, after all, the Song dynasty did unify China. Not to blindly flow with it, or become a puppet. To find your place in the pattern, where your agency meets the world's indifference, where your values meet necessity, and the virtual meets the real. The pearl Nuwa carved is lost to most of us. The Harmonious Core still glows, waiting for your money. The question for me isn't whether to chase it, it's whether you'll remember, once you have it, why you climbed the mountain in the first place. Where Winds Meet is an imperfect masterpiece. The monetization is aggressive, the story is sometimes obtuse, the cultural barriers are real. Western audiences may never embrace it the way Eastern markets have. But it's also something rare. A game with a coherent philosophical vision that trusts players to engage with complexity. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't apologize for difficulty. It doesn't pretend the economic systems are cheap. Beautiful and brutal, fair and corrupt, controllable and chaotic. And in doing so, it becomes a mirror. Your choices in the game reflect your values in life. Your spending habits reveal your priorities. Your class selection shows what you think matters. The puppet poison isn't just in the game. It's the question hanging over all of us. Are we controlling the tools, or are they controlling us? If this helped you think differently about games or culture, or just understand what the hell is going on in the game, subscribe for more deep dives into the mythology, archetypes, and hidden philosophies of entertainment. And if you're playing Where Winds Meet, what weapons did you choose? With a couple of weapons to choose from, I want to know which one's your favorite. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.